Hello and welcome to another segment of DSU Inside Perspective. I'm Carlos Holmes, and this is the show where we talk with faculty, staff, students, administrators, alumni, or even people from the outside of the campus and talk to them about some of the things that are going on in the world or some of the great things that are going on at the Delaware State University. Today I'm here with Darrell Hughson, English major from Newport News, Virginia.
Yes, sir.
I always drive past there, but never stop to see what's going on there. You recently had an award-winning paper at the 2019 Reflecting Black 400 Years of African American Life and History Research Symposium.
Yes, sir.
That is a mouthful. But you won the big prize for undergraduate paper.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. What
Thank
was
you.
your paper on?
My paper was The Odyssey of the Black Scholar. I took this theoretic study of myths and legends by Joseph Campbell in his book Hero with a Thousand Faces and compared it to the life of a black scholar, the inner workings that a person of African American descent goes through to achieve higher education.
Now, you said that the original work was to study myths and legends, but when you're studying the black scholar, you're studying real people, right? These are flesh and blood people.
The heroes that were mentioned in the Hero of a Thousand Faces were fake, were myths.
Who is the philosopher in question you're talking about?
Joseph Campbell.
Joseph Campbell.
This came out during the 60s. He was one of the more noteworthy philosophers and comparative literature studies professors, and his work mostly studied on comparative religion and myth.
Is he American?
He is. He's also Caucasian. That is, I feel like that's worthy to note because his study, even though he isn't a Caucasian American, it took reference to all kinds of cultures internationally: Greek, Chinese, Japanese, Indian, African. He took myths and religions from all over the globe and put them together into one structure.
Okay. Now, in yours, you focused on the black scholar.
That's correct.
And I was fascinated by your paper, by the way.
Thank you.
And my understanding is that the philosopher, establishes 17 segments or levels, which a hero, a mythical hero or a mythical legend goes through to get to the pinnacle level of hero, bona fide hero.
Yes, sir.
In your paper, you focused on 5.
That's correct.
You focused on Adventure to Call. You focused on Refusal to Call. You focused on the Belly of the Whale.
Belly of the Whale.
You focused on the how do you say that?
Apotheosis.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, the Master of Two Worlds.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You chose to focus on only on those 5. Why?
Well, time.
Okay.
I think if I took the entire Monomyth with all 17 and gave it the same amount of detail that I wanted to, like a consistent amount of detail, it would just be way too long for this specific conference and just too much time to divert from my actual studies here. And then also, I think these 5 points are of the most pivotal points for an African American in education.
Okay. Now I got to ask you, because I came across that word monomyth, and I was so busy reading, I kind of leaped over it, and I said I was going to go back and look it up, but I never found anything in your paper or any of the references I had to tell me. What is a monomyth? What is that?
The monomyth is the name of the circular structure that Joseph Campbell made to essentially map the hero in general.
And his progression. Okay.
They will start with their familiar world. They will start with things they know. They will cross into the unknown world, get whatever they want, whatever the quest was for. They'll get their prize and then come back.
Okay, well, let's do something interesting here, because one of probably my favorite Delaware State University hero is Dr. Jerome Holland, who was president at Delaware State University from 1953 to 1960 and is generally considered by people that know a lot about this subject, he is considered the savior of Delaware State University. He was president when it was Delaware State College.
Yes,
but he basically, his unique leadership ability saved the college from closure.
Yes, sir.
It was one of our darkest periods of time. So I applied this. He was a guy that was born in upstate New York. He ended up, his family ended up having some connections with some white folks that had connections with Cornell. So he was one of the first, he wasn't the first, but he was one of the first to go to Cornell. He was an athlete, a very prolific athlete, especially with respect to football. And so he starred on the Cornell football team. He was the first African-American to ever play on their team. And he ended up being an All-American 2 years in a row. And of course, we know his path did not lead him. Fortunately, they weren't accepting blacks in the NFL at the time, or whatever the equivalent of professional football was at the time. So he went on and eventually got his doctorate, and eventually became the president of Delaware State College, where he got things really turned around in terms of where we were at in the dark period of life we were in. You were able to read some of that.
Yes, sir.
With respect to this level of call to adventure and refusal of the call.
Yes, sir.
Now, you told me before we got started that you kind of put those two together.
Yes.
Explain that, and explain it in the context of Dr. Holland.
Well, the call to adventure is the inciting incident for a hero. It's the moment that surges them into whatever journey they need. Either something needs to change in their life, or they want to change something in their life. The call to adventure and the refusal to call typically go together, because although it is a divine thrust on the hero, they still have to choose. Some do not choose, and then the refusal will lead into other circumstances. But from how I understand Dr. Holland, he chose. He shined early. His talent academically and athletically was discovered, and so that his being given, and also given the state of African Americans at the time, called him to adventure. He got the chance to explore his academia and athleticism in college, but his talent and the circumstances surrounding his blackness is what called him to adventure.
Now, the next level you talk about in your paper,
yes, sir,
is the belly of the whale. And my understanding of that is that you have two areas that the hero, or the potential hero, is confronted with.
Yeah.
His standing, in terms of a black scholar, his persona as an African American, and his persona as someone that would be involved in the scholarship world.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is what Dr. Holland essentially faced, right, at Cornell.
Sir. Yeah. Just theoretically, and just applying the logic that Joseph Campbell did in his book, our journey is split up into the world that we know and the world that we don't. He knew where he came from. He knew his talents, he knew his parents, he knew his family, he knew the community he came from. But crossing over into academia was a different beast. And so the belly of the whale is that moment that it feels like you're drowning. That moment that it feels like this new world to discover is just too much. It's suffocating. And it's just one of the trials that we have to go through. For Dr. Holland, one of the lowest points that he had to go through was just merely living at Cornell. He was one of the very, very few black students there, and he couldn't sleep with his peers, his teammates. He had to sleep in a boiler room. Yeah. So that's something that he had to crawl out of. That's something that he had to deal with just to keep pursuing his education.
I am so fascinated by this. We're going to split this up between two parts. So this is part one, okay? Now, as we're getting ready to close here, your paper won the top prize at this symposium. I got to ask you, how much did you win?
The prize is, for undergraduates, $500.
Oh my, that improved your budget a little bit for that particular week, did you?
Yeah. Hopefully I can use that to do more of this, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, we're going to come back with part two with Darrell. It's very, very fascinating paper. Thank you. We're going to see you in part two.
Thank you.
And we are going to see you in part two. In the meanwhile, everybody have a good day.